Hey guys, this is Ollie with 10 Points to Ponder, where we like to talk about all the things that get you canceled. Today, I want to talk about the image of God and its importance in relation to our lives. I'm kind of going to go off the cuff, no cuts. I'm just going to talk to you from the heart and talk about the importance of the Imago Dei. That is that statement in Genesis 1:27, in which it says that God made man in his image, male and female, and how that is so important and seminal to our humanity, and why the Imago Dei is under attack today. And also I want to talk about just how it relates to basically everything that we do. The very image of God definitely relates to all the topics that we talk about on this channel: race, politics, Jesus, and manhood, because without understanding at the core that every person, whether they accept or acknowledge God or not, is made in the image of God, then we have no foundation for being. We can't really talk about right and wrong, and we can't talk about even things like biology. What is the difference between man versus other creatures? One of the great examples that I've seen of the importance of the Imago Dei is if you could imagine driving down the street, as everyone has, and invariably at times you will see a squirrel. You might even see a deer. You might see a raccoon. You might see some animal that's run over and just left on the side of the street. And most people upon that sight will probably just keep on driving, unless they're trying to get some roadkill to eat. But most people will keep on driving. But imagine that you're driving down the street and you see a human being. I don't care if they're disabled. I don't care if they're super young or super old. And you see their body lying on the side of the street, you would stop. And what is it that makes us stop? It's because this person is unique. This is a human being, different than all of the other animals. This would be why we would actually seek to cover the body. We would seek to remove the body as soon as possible. We would seek to figure out what happened to the person. We wouldn't just leave a human being on the side of the road. And once you understand that there is an intrinsic difference between humans and all other creatures, right? The fact that we know right and wrong, the fact that we have creative power. We've been given that sort of creative power that God has. Obviously, we're not God. We don't speak things into existence, but we can definitely take all of God's creation and we can fashion it into something different. I mean, I'm driving a car, which is basically parts of God's creation that's been fashioned into something different. And so once you understand that we're made in the image of God, then you understand our purpose, which is here in this life to give glory to God and to honor Him and to enjoy Him forever. The image of God is so important when we talk about the topic of sin. Like, the reason that sin is wrong, one of the reasons is that basically sin is anything that's against God, anything that we've been told by God that you should not do. Sin is also missing the mark. So all the things that we've been told that we should do by God that we don't do. The reason, though, that sin is wrong, first of all, is because of the glory and honor of God. But then the second reason that I can think of is because sin has a way of dehumanizing you. When you think about things like adultery, you think about things like theft, you think about dishonoring your parents, all of that. What sin does is it dehumanizes you, the person, but then as you're committing sin, you may also be dehumanizing someone else. You don't see them any longer as a creature that God has breathed his life into and is made in his image. And so that might be a different way to look at things like sin. If I steal from someone else, am I essentially saying that they, as someone who's made in the image of God, don't have a right to their property? And I'm essentially placing myself in the place of God, where I get to give and take away from that person. And so all sin can be looked at as obviously an affront to God, but then also an affront to God's image. The reason we don't commit adultery or sexual sin. Sexual sin can be looked at as basically dehumanizing yourself. Not seeing yourself as a human being who's made in the image of God, who is valuable, who is designed to function emotionally, physically in certain ways that are not we're designed to function physically in certain ways that God allows and enjoys in, revels in, right? Such as having sex within marriage. But we're also designed that there is a metaphysical draw that occurs between people during sex, and there's also what I would say almost like psychic, non-physical but psychic wounds that occur when what is meant to join a man and woman together is now something that's misused, misapplied, and then you're no longer with that person that you're now bound to. And the scriptures talk about basically when you're joined with one person, you almost become of the same spirit. It's like putting together two pieces of paper, and then you rip the pieces of paper apart, and there's going to be tears, there's going to be wounds that occur, and those wounds are wounds of you not fully being able to express and enjoy humanity. I know I'm going a little bit longer, so I want to clearly talk about how the Imago Dei relates to race, politics, Jesus, and manhood. Race, right? We've all been created in the image of God. Just because you're black doesn't mean that you are superior to someone else. Just because you're white doesn't mean that you're superior to someone else. We have elevated race above humanity in our culture, and that's really some of the reason for even starting this whole channel, was because I was sickened by the fact that our society and our culture has gone in that direction, elevating your skin color above our shared and common humanity. Elevating skin color so that for some people they can go out in the streets, loot, burn, throw bricks through buildings, and no one says anything, while other people are forced to kneel down and say Black Lives Matter as some sort of penance for the sin of being born a certain skin color. That is evil. And again, that denies the image of God anytime we elevate race above our shared humanity. The second thing, politics. Politics and the way that we govern ourselves in this culture has quite a bit to do with whether we see one another as humans made in the image of God, but also flawed human beings. If we're flawed human beings, then we need to limit the power of every person. We need to understand that absolute power corrupts absolutely. This is the role of government, to allow people to stand or fall based upon all of the gifts that God has given them, but then also to limit the power of those who would say that they know better how we should govern ourselves. We should be governed by God. Obviously, we have to live in civil society and we have to have agreements. And so in politics, what we're trying to do is figure out what agreements make sense. And the agreements that will always make the most sense are those that keep people's hands off of the rights of other people that have been given by God, and those things that limit the power of central planners and people who are, as human beings, prone to corruption. Let's talk about Jesus and the image of God. Obviously, we're created, right? Jesus is a creative force. He's God in human flesh. And so Jesus has made us in his image, and he talks quite a bit about it. And because we are sinful people and we follow after our first the first Adam, right? We've been made in God's image, but God's image was marred within us through man's sin. We are separated from the holy God, and we're separated from understanding our true humanity until Christ comes in us and lives within us and transforms us and lets us know that we're loved by him. And then through his Spirit living in us, he gives us the fruits of the Spirit: the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, all of these things expressed. And it's easy to recite all the fruits of the Spirit, but really the fruits of the Spirit are you simply finally expressing the humanity that God has given you, being fully the person that God has made you. There's so many things that we do that we don't even want to do. We don't even like to do. We don't even like ourselves. We're trying to numb ourselves through so many other things. And yet, in the end, we know that Jesus, his forgiveness, his grace, his love, his life being lived out through us is primary. That's living. That's living as someone who is made in the image of God. And if we miss Jesus, then we miss the fulfillment of all of our human longings, the fulfillment of that whole that God has placed in all of our hearts. So Jesus is vital. Jesus is vital to living out the image of God. And then manhood. Man and men were made to be leaders. And through sin, the state of men has always been to do what I would say four things, because these are the kind of the four things that really we need in order to be men that are made in the image of God, to fulfill our role properly. The first thing is to reject passivity. When man sinned, then sin entered into the world. Man sinned after man, Adam, was sitting there watching the serpent talk to his wife and convince her to eat the fruit? How many men stand by and watch their houses destroyed? How many passively sit by and let their kids' innocence be taken? When are men going to stand up and maybe be a little crazy and a little irrational and say, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. As for me and my house, Sundays, we are going to church. I don't care if you have this game or that game or this thing to do. I do not care. All of those things come second to us as a family going and serving the Lord. So many men just sit by and let their families slowly drift. And I'm not saying that you have any control necessarily over your children's salvation, but you have the power of example. And what sort of example are you setting if you don't prioritize the things of God? You're telling them that it's not that big a deal. So rejecting passivity. The second, accepting responsibility. Men, just like Adam, don't want to take responsibility. When Adam ate of the tree and figured out that he was naked and wanted to hide from God, and God was questioning him, what did he say? And who did he blame? He didn't say, "Oh Lord, I have sinned against you and you alone." That's what David would say. No, he said, it's the woman that you have given me. Right? He's blaming God for what happened. And so many men find some way of shirking responsibility. So many men are sitting there not fully being the men that God wants them to be the human that God wants them to be in so many areas of their lives, because they don't want to accept the responsibility. They know the truth that everything that you create is something that you are required to cultivate. And because of that, so many men would say nothing ventured, therefore nothing lost. But nothing ventured also means nothing gained. You took no steps, you took no responsibility. And for that, you will not be commended. And so we've got to accept responsibility if we want to truly be men that have a heart after God. And then third, we want to lead courageously. Again, it's so easy to follow. It's so easy to complain. It's so easy to blame. It's so easy, like Adam, to just follow our wives. You see, it says that sin entered to the world because of one man's sin. It didn't say sin entered into the world because Eve sinned. It said sin entered into the world because Adam sinned. And here we are as people. Are we going to lead? Are we, even when we see things that are broken down, that are messed up, are we going to lead? One of the great definitions of the role of men I heard from Matt Chandler, and he said that the purpose and role of a man is to set about creating an order for human flourishing. So you're setting things in order. so that people can flourish. Here I am driving in a car, and I'm driving on a road that some man paved. And when I go to my house and use the bathroom, I'm using a bathroom that flushes the toilet into a sewer that some men laid those lines. And when I turn on my lights, some men created an order and an electrical grid so that my house would work. This is your role, men. Create an order for human flourishing. This is how you lead. Create an order. You don't have to know everything, but you have to at least try. At least try within your homes to create some sort of order. You can't just have your kids sitting around, being lazy, playing video games all day. Create an order. Lead courageously. Figure out something. Do something. Have them read a book. Share the book with them. Do something. And the fourth part of manhood, when we talk about the importance of the image of God, is understanding that as men, and I love my pastor put it this way, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. He said, our job as men is to die. And some may bristle at that, but it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. That is to care more about eternity and spiritual investments than even our very lives. To invest in eternity. To not get caught up in the trappings and the tricks and the distractions that this world is going to try to put in front of us. Can we invest eternally? Can we give up some of our temporal pleasures? Can we say that eternity is on our hearts, that it's our primary focus? Could we say with Paul, as he's speaking to the elders, I think it's in Acts chapter 20, you can check me out on that if that's correct, but Acts chapter 20, he says that my life is worth nothing unless I use it to proclaim the gospel of Christ. How many of us can say that about our lives, that my life is, my mission, my purpose, the things that God has created me for is the reason for this life. And that's why every man should have bristled at the idea of staying home, locked down for some disease. Our job is to die. Our job is to lead and go and create that order, and understand that, yes, some of us will die. But at the end, whatever suffering goes on in this life is nothing to be compared with eternity. And so I want to leave you with that, and I want to see what your thoughts are on what it means to live as a man and understand that we're created in the image of God. We need to strive by God's grace, by His Spirit, to be more the people that He's made us, to not fall prey to our ancestors, to even our family, even the example that we've seen from other men. It's time to lead, and it's time to be the men that He's called us to be, men made in the image of God. My name is Ali Shuaga, and this has been 10 Points to ponder.